Hi, Gary Murray. We are here with one of the greatest directors of the 20th century.
Really?
Yes. I consider you one of the greatest directors of the 20th century, Mr. John Landis. So, your first film was Schlock, and then Kentucky.
Actually, a lot of them were Schlock, but yeah, my first film was Schlock.
And then Kentucky Fried Movie. Okay, right. Both of those are really cult films that have infected a lot of filmmakers.
That's the right word, infected.
No, affected.
Oh.
Okay. So, what is your feeling on cult films?
I've never understood what cult means. It's become something different than it was. In the 60s and 70s, when there were revival houses and art houses, a cult film meant a specific thing. It meant that it was a film that was box office unsuccessful, like Rocky Horror. That was a failure at the box office, but then had a very loyal and dedicated audience, had an afterlife, and had what was called a cult following. You know, Pink Flamingos. I mean, there are a lot of movies. Now I don't know what cult means, because they refer to all kinds of movies as cult movies, movies that, you know, made hundreds of millions of dollars. So I don't know what it means anymore. But I hear cult and I think of Scientology. So, you know, I don't know.
So, you're here for Blues Brothers. Now, when you were making the film, did you ever consider how it was going to be accepted 25 years later? I mean, look, you got all the Blues Brothers ties, shirts, hats. Or 35 years. Did you think it was going to be that big of a hit? That we're going to have that big of legs?
You don't think about stuff like that. You don't. No, I mean, all movies have a life of their own. Once you make it, it's like goodbye. You know, it goes off. And it's very gratifying that the Blues Brothers has such a long life. I've been very lucky that way. A lot of my pictures are still showing and stuff. So, but it's specifically the Blues Brothers, that movie came about because of Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi's love of rhythm and blues, and that was a passion project for those guys and for me. But really, Danny's was positively evangelical about it. You got to remember, 1979, it was all ABBA and the Bee Gees.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was great. I have mixed feelings about the memories, because although it was wonderful to make it, at the time John was having drug problems, and that eventually killed him. And I loved John, and that was hard. It was hard.
Mm-hmm. So that was my next question. Was what was the difference? You're the only director who worked with John Belushi twice.
Right. Is that true?
I can't think of anybody else who has. So, what was the difference between working John Belushi in Animal House and working at John Belushi with Blues Brothers?
Well, in terms of John, he was an absolutely fabulous person, warm and funny and incredibly gifted. I adored John. The difference was on Animal House, he was not addicted to cocaine, and you know, he got into a spiral of drug abuse that got worse and worse, and eventually died from it. And it really got bad in the middle of the Blues Brothers, and it was difficult. But in terms of working with him, he was always wonderful.
Now, you also made Thriller, which many people consider is the best MTV music video ever made. What are your thoughts on Thriller and the whole acceptance? I mean, Thriller is still, they dance Thriller, you play it, and all the kids dance to it the same way they did a million years ago. What's your thoughts on all that?
Well, that came about, that was a complete fluke, and came about, Michael Jackson was an admirer of a movie I made called An American Werewolf in London, and he was particularly taken with the work of the very brilliant Rick Baker, The Metamorphosis. And Mike called me and said, I want to turn into a monster. That was all he wanted, was to change on camera to a monster. So it gave me the opportunity to make this little Fantasia, and I wanted to make, you know, that wasn't made for MTV. MTV had nothing to do with it. It was made, he had already done Beat It and Billie Jean, which were hugely successful and influential videos. his album was already the most successful selling album of all time. What Thriller came about, and CBS Records, they wouldn't give us any money. They said, forget it. You know, it's been out over a year. So it's a long story, but Thriller's extraordinary success was nobody's good idea. That was all amazing and unprecedented. And the album, once the video came out, the album tripled in sales, having already been the best seller. I mean, it was ridiculous. And then it became, you know, it basically created the home video business. I mean, it's a long, involved saga of Thriller. The bottom line was Michael wanted to turn into a monster, and he was wonderful to work with. He was fun and funny and, you know, a little nuts, but all good. Thriller, I have nothing but good experience.
Now, you just mentioned American Werewolf in London, which I consider one of the classic horror films of all time. Okay, it's in the top 10 of all horror films.
Why aren't you a film critic, goddammit?
Actually, I am when I do this, but I really do. I consider it, and I mean, no, I honestly do. You've made horror, you've made comedy, you've made musicals. What's the hardest one to do?
No, there's a misnomer, which is that genre. Directors get typed just like actors, and you get typed, that's an economic thing. I mean, you know, I've made very, very successful comedies, so they'll give me a comedy to make, and I enjoy making comedies. But if you're a filmmaker, you should be able to do all genre, because filmmaking, the craft, you know, put the camera here, you guys do this, that job remains the same.
Okay, and one last question. What are you working on right now?
Do you know, I just made something that will be revealed May 2nd that I can't discuss. I'm working on a number of things, but the truth is I've come to the conclusion now, you don't talk about it until you're selling it. So I have a book, I have a lot going on.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It was very nice to meet you. Have a great time tonight.